you couldn't make an IBM compatible computer without MS-DOS.
Right.
So, you definitely, went to Microsoft, so I spent a lot of time with Bill in the early days, licensing DOS and then through all the adventures of Windows and beyond. But that kind of started around 85 when we started making our own machines and our own PCs.
What was he like at that time? Peak Bill Gates, in Microsoft taking over the world mode.
He was aggressive and geeky and definitely wanted what he wanted.
Yeah.
but also we built a strong partnership, and it was for the most part a win-win.
How was it negotiating with him? Like, he was a frontline negotiator, I understand, and pretty aggressive about this is what you're going to pay for the operating system, and you're not going to work on anybody else's operating system, and just his way or the highway. Is it true?
I wouldn't quite say it was that extreme. And we actually had other OSs. I mean, we licensed Unix from AT&T and tried to develop our own version of Unix in the late 80s. That didn't really work out. He was aggressive, but the stories probably exaggerate some of that stuff.
Yeah. And so Jobs gets kicked out of Apple, and he decides to create Next. And then he starts pitching you on, hey, maybe Dell should make workstations and the workstation business. You don't do that. But then he gets back inside of app because there's no apps for Next. I mean, you could buy a Next operating system, but there was literally nothing you could do with it, right? Like, you could use the calculator. There's no apps were built for it.
If you go online, you search Next operating system, Next OS, and Dell, you'll find some remnants of things that were done. It never really amounted to much. But, as you know, that Next OS became Mac OS.
Yeah.
And so, Steve had this idea of licensing the Mac OS to us, which we were pretty interested in. But, he didn't want us to pay for every copy of Mac OS that we used. He wanted us to pay for every PC we shipped and just ship it on every PC, because he was afraid that, we would wipe out his hardware business. And ultimately, it wasn't a deal that made sense, and didn't happen.
See, I think this is like a seminal moment in the history of both companies that I wasn't aware of. But if you think about that moment in time, Dells were booming. People are buying them like crazy. He wants you to put Windows and Mac OS, almost like a dual boot situation, on every Dell.
Yeah, the way
the
customer
way it
would work.
pick.
That's right. The way it would work is the machine would turn on, and it would say, press 1 for Windows and 2 for Mac OS or something like that. And
Wow.
Then it would
Load the operating system.
We knew how to do it technically. It wasn't a big technical problem.
But if you think about that moment in time, Apple just could not get market share from Windows. Windows was crushing it. They were moving much faster. They allowed anybody could make hardware for
their share of PCs peaked, before IBM introduced the PC.
Right. So just going through the scenario, the what if Steve said, you know what, just give me $1 for every time every PC you ship, instead of probably he asked for $50 or $100.
Oh, you mean if he'd asked for $1 for every unit?
Yeah. Because what did he ask for? $50 or something? $100?
It ended up being a kind of an obscene amount of money, because
hundreds of millions a year,
because of the number of machines that we were shipping.
Right.
By that point we were shipping, tens of millions of machines per year.
So, but imagine the scenario when he said, you know what, I just want to beat Microsoft. I want there to be more Mac OS machines than Windows machines. I'll give it to you for $100 million flat license fee. You take the deal, or $50 million, or whatever he gives it to you for. how would the industry have shaped up after that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, one of the other open questions then was, okay, you're offering us this deal, which isn't very good right now, right? What happens in 3 or 4 years? And he wouldn't commit to continually offering it to us, in 5 years or 10 years, which I didn't like that at all, because, it could have been a situation where we created a whole bunch of new users and then, we couldn't create a follow-on product, which wouldn't be a good strategy for us.
Take us through the laptop era, because that, was something I was in IT at that time in the early 90s, and luggables came out, and Dell had one, and Compaq and HP were all coming out with these, 7-8 pound laptops. And I think Gates was on this very early. Apple had one eventually. But it seemed like they really sucked and people were down on the market, but you stuck with it. Explain that decision making and what it was like, because these things didn't even have batteries at the time, I believe. They were just plug-in luggables that were, 8 pounds, 9 pounds?
Well, no, they were much more. And Compaq actually started, with the original luggable. And the thing was basically like a huge, briefcase. I think it weighed, 15 or 20 pounds. And it was basically a transportable desktop computer. You had to plug it in. But then, as you started to have better battery technology, first nickel metal hydride and then lithium ion, as you started to have the transition from, CRTs to LCDs, the miniaturization, it was clear that you were going to be able to have portable computers. And the other thing that needed to happen was the semiconductors needed to use less power because they were designed for a, continuous active current. And that was just, way too much power, and they wouldn't have long battery life. So, everybody in the industry was focused on how do you make, a machine that's the size of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, right? That's not super thick. And you can go find videos of me proudly displaying, these machines, which are kind of laughable by today's standards. Today it's like you got super thin laptops and incredibly powerful. But back then, the idea of being able to take your computer with you was just amazing. We had modems. There was no wireless technology, but all that was part of the origins of what we all enjoy today.
Listen, right now, LinkedIn is going to give you $100 credit towards your first ad campaign. I want you to go to linkedin.com/thisweekinstartups and get that $100 right now. Now, why would you use LinkedIn marketing? High quality leads. We all need leads. We're all running businesses here. My leads, startup founders. Your leads might be SaaS enterprise. It might be CFOs. It might be CMOs. It might be CTOs. Who knows? Everybody's got a different product, but everybody is on LinkedIn. We all know that because we all use LinkedIn every single day. So if you're planning to launch a new campaign, you know your audience, your team is excited, and everything is going according to plan. We've all been there, except you have that one thought in the back of your head. How can I be sure that my acquisition campaign will drive high impact leads for my sales team? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you don't need to guess, because when you advertise on LinkedIn, your message reaches people who are ready to engage you. LinkedIn equals business, business equals LinkedIn. You know this, it's very simple. So with 30 million companies engaging and over 71% of professionals using LinkedIn to inform their business decisions, LinkedIn can help bring your growth to the next level. Don't wait. Just start achieving your brand and lead gen goals. Get a $100 ad credit toward your first LinkedIn campaign at linkedin.com/thisweekinstartups. Once again, linkedin.com/thisweekinstartups for the $100. No spaces, no dashes. And terms and conditions apply because they're giving you a $100.